morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the 6th Annual Breakfast for Brain Cancer, a brunch in honour of all those affected by brain cancer. The White Pearl Foundation fundraising events support the Brain Cancer Group's research arm, which is housed on the Royal North Shore Hospital campus, undoubtedly a centre of excellence in the treatment of brain cancer. Today we have joining us from the Brain Cancer Group, Dr. James Drummond, Neuroradiology Chief of the Brain Cancer Imaging Laboratory, the project that this event is held in support of. Dr. Jackie Yim, the Brain Cancer Group's Head of Operations and Research. The Brain Cancer Group Company Secretary and Director, Tracy O'Donoghue, an untiring volunteer, having provided accounting services to the charity for over 15 years voluntarily, who serves on the board and does whatever she can in any capacity to help. All organisations should have a volunteer like Tracy O'Donoghue. Well deserved, Tracy. Sitting beside Tracy, her dear friend Jan Hunter, who again this year has baked 140 of the delicious TBCG cookies for all our guests today. Yes, please, a round of applause. I think this is the 5th year that you've done this for. Thank you very, very much. With us, our TBCG ambassadors and major donors, Evan and Margaret Schonk and Jane Reckney and Nigel Stoke, welcome. A very special acknowledgement of the family of Tim Cohen. I am very pleased that Tim's wife and sister could join us today. Barbara Cohen and Annie Williams, who channelled theirs and their family's grief into substantial support of our imaging laboratory, providing funds for the establishment and ongoing expansion of the lab in memory of Tim. Thank you, Barbara and Annie, and your entire family. All of us at the Brain Cancer Group remain most grateful. Thank you. I hope I can keep it together for this one. Also very special to us, the husband and mother of our much-loved Ambassador Matthew McCarran, who we very sadly lost last year. Ed and Elaine, welcome. This can't be easy. Last time you were here with us in this very room 2 breakfasts ago, Matt delivered a superb address that received a standing ovation. Matt also secured a $450,000 donation from the Lewis Foundation, the charity arm of the Lewis Land Group, to fund our support program for 3 years. Thank you for coming along, Elaine, and for also wishing to support us further. With a memorial fundraiser on September 28th, we encourage all here to attend, and we'll do all we can to spread the word about this event in honour of Matt. I must also mention Pamela Roussis and her daughter Jenna Brennan, mother and sister of Peter Georges. Their family and friends also channelled their grief into a very successful fundraiser last year for the Brain Cancer Group. Welcome and thank you. Where are you? Pamela, Jenna? There you are. Yes, please. And a very warm welcome to Joanne Hüging, who will generously share their story, hers, Will's and their sons. Welcome, Joanne and Will. Also with us today, we are honoured to have the Consul General for the United States of America, Christine Elder. Thank you so much for joining us, Christine. Welcome to the representatives of various organisations, the Cooperative Trials Group for Neuro-Oncology Cogno, Desma. Thank you, Desma. The Catherian Association of Australia, Kathy, where are you? Kathy's here, and some of the other girls from there. The Hellenic Lyceum, Liana. There she is. Radio 1683, Wednesday Night Live, Christine. The Greek Young Matrons, Daphne and Jean, thank you. And my beloved St George Ladies Auxiliary, Philoptocho, all my favourite people, there they are. Welcome to our White Pearl Foundation sponsors, the Greek Herald, Automa Communications, Calligraphics and Zest Catering, who offered us a generous charity rate for this event, including waiving of the room hire. Thanks, Rafa, and thank you to Chef and the team. We keep coming back because you do such a great job looking after us. A very big shout out. Now, deep appreciation must go to the table captains. I put out the call, but you filled the room. Penny Neofitou, Chrysanthi Vulgarakis and Miranda Adamu, Christina Tsatsoulis, Maria Barbudas, Desma Spiridopoulos, Christine Penklis, Penny Kiros, Kathy Vadakis, Pamela Rousas, Alexia Brisimis George, Katrina Spirakis, Tanya Kapeliotis and Susie Voss, and the Shonks, the always supportive Shonks. And to those who rang even one friend to join us today, thank you for making those calls. To our prize donors, To our prize donors, those who source prizes for us, those who have made cash donations, and of course our volunteers, a very big shout out to our volunteers today. Many have purchased tickets to the event and still put their hands up to help. So could I have a round of applause for our volunteers? And if I've missed anyone, I apologise. Very importantly, thank you to all our attendees. We wish you an enjoyable and memorable brunch. So, to our impressive speakers. Dr. Jackie Yim is our Head of Operations and Research at the Brain Cancer Group, and Jackie will welcome you all on behalf of the Brain Cancer Group. Jackie.
Thanks, Suzanne, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. My name's Jackie. I'm the Head of Operations and Research at the Brain Cancer Group. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming and in support of TBCG's research, education and support pillars. So before I go ahead and talk about the Brain Cancer Group, you might be thinking who I am, so I'll give you a quick rundown of who I am. So I'm a radiation therapist by background. I've worked in public and private radiotherapy settings for just over 10 years. And then I decided to do a PhD in health economics, looking at the economic implications of anxiety and depression in cancer care. And that gave me a really good insight in terms of how funding is distributed in the healthcare system, and what makes good and efficient use of money, and also what makes inefficient use of money. And after completing that, I decided to join the Brain Cancer Group in 2021, designing and implementing the Databank project, which is a comprehensive brain cancer database that links pathological findings with patient clinical outcomes and also medical imaging as well. And that's a really unique database because that really gives clinicians and researchers a really comprehensive view in terms of what has happened to a patient and what might have caused the differences in outcomes. So the Brain Cancer Group is a charity that's based on the North Shore Medical Campus in St. Leonard's. And our work is based around the three pillars, which is research, education, and support. The charity was started by two neurosurgeons, Dr. Raymond Cook and Dr. Michael Biggs, back in the year 2000. And then soon was joined by Dr. Helen Wheeler, who is a medical oncologist. And over the years, the charity has funded really impactful programs. And just to give you an example, we funded the first brain cancer nurse coordinator. That was the first one in Australia. And we're really proud to say that she's still the only one in Australia who is qualified as a nurse practitioner. The other one that we've just recently established is the Australasian First Imaging Laboratory, and I'll speak a little bit about that later. And Dr. James Drummond will give us a very good insight in terms of what the work is being done in there. But I think in the process, what the Brain Cancer Group has done is funded all these impactful programs that has allowed the neuro-oncology service to thrive and continue to allow the service to lead the way in neuro-oncology care. So on the research front, we're making great progress with Dr. Alex Yule. He's a medical oncologist, but he's also the Brain Cancer Group's PhD candidate. And he's looking at growing brain cancer cell lines, different brain cancer cell lines, to investigate new treatments and new ways of diagnosing brain cancer. The other thing that we've started up recently, as I've already talked about, is the imaging laboratory that utilizes sophisticated imaging that we've got on site at the North Shore Medical Campus to improve diagnosis, treatment, and also monitoring of brain cancers. And as I talk about the imaging lab, I must thank the family of Tim Cohen, who has, for their generous donations over the years, have allowed for the establishment and also the continual research work that's being done. Also to the White Pearl Foundation, who has donated significant funds over the years towards the Brain Cancer Group's research arm. Education as our second pillar, and education is one of our pillars because we acknowledge that when brain cancer patients and their carers go through this journey, that access to high quality information is really empowering for their decision making and for how they want to go about their next steps. And a good example of the work that we've been doing in this space is last Friday we co-hosted a patient education forum at the City with the New South Wales Neuro-Oncology Group and also the Brain Tumour Alliance Australia Group, which is the national patient advocacy organisation for brain cancers. And this event provided invaluable insights and support to those affected by brain cancer, but also their caregivers as well. And our third and final arm is the support program. And over the years, we're really proud to say that we've made a significant impact to those who have been affected by brain cancer. So as Suzanne mentioned, we must thank the Lewis Foundation for their $450,000 donation over 3 years to support the salary of our neuro-oncology nurse practitioner, who has been an invaluable resource for brain cancer patients and their carers, because she's only just one phone call away to access, she could write scripts, she can order tests. She's just been an amazing resource for our patients and carers. And the last time we counted how many patients and carers she would have looked after, that's probably over 1,000 patients and carers since she's been around. So amazing work. So all funds raised today will go directly to these vital programs that we provide for patients and carers. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today and supporting our cause. I hope you all enjoy the food and beautiful weather, beautiful venue. Thank you, Suzanne. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of our speakers today. But if you have any questions about what the Brain Cancer Group does throughout today, please feel free to come and chat with me. More than happy to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. That was excellent. Also from the Brain Cancer Group, please give a warm welcome to Dr. James Drummond, Neuroradiology Chief of the Brain Cancer Imaging Laboratory.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to make sure I've got the right slide deck. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your support. I was on call last night till about 2 o'clock in the morning. So this is probably the best recovery I've had since an on-call shift. Perfect excuse to take a day off. I was told by Suzanne, there's a few rules about my talk today, that it can't be too scientific. But to be honest, when I speak to people and I speak to patients, they get the science pretty quickly. So this is going to be a bit scientific. It's not going to be too physicsy because I'm going to bore myself and my partner closer to the microphone. Okay. I'm going to bore my partner with the physics, but I'm going to run through some of the things we're doing and just give you a bit of an overview of some of the changes that we're making in the imaging of these patients. So there's a lot of people we collaborate with, and it's great to have the US consul here because there's a few in the States we're still trying to get on the books. And if I make any criticisms of the US medical system, I'm sorry in advance. I don't really have any significant disclosures, just to say there's going to be a lot of pictures of brains, and none of these are patients that actually have gone through our system, so all of these are anonymized patients. And the one person I really do need to thank who's not here today is Michael Back. Many of you would have interacted with Michael, and he really is extraordinary. His efforts in keeping research going on the North Shore campus, and I think we should sort of tip our hat to Michael in his absence. So we've got amazing infrastructure. It's hard to explain how good our access and our infrastructure is on the North Shore campus, and that's a combination of the public and the private hospital, and we're hoping that the public system gives us some new infrastructure soon, and Michael endlessly is trying to get money so we get even better pictures. And the Brain Cancer Imaging Lab is doing a lot of things at once. And some of these things we're trying to execute, and some of these things get put on the back burner, and then some have more enthusiasm. But I'm going to go through a couple of things today that are of particular interest for clinical trials. I'm particularly going to focus on the most aggressive, most difficult to treat brain cancer. And it's affected so many people and so many people's families in this room, including my own. But it's still the most difficult one we try and deal with. It still has very tough survival. That's going very jazzy after Michael. It still has very tough survival. And treatment hasn't really changed a huge amount, which we keep hearing in the press over the last 10, 15 years. So a lot of my work is trying to optimize the therapies we have at the moment. A lot of what we hear in the press is about revolutionary changes in treatment, the oncoming third epoch of cancer therapies, which is immunotherapies and cell therapies. And brain cancer hasn't been left behind on that front, but we know from clinical trials so far that some of the more advanced immuno and cell therapies that are coming for other cancers probably aren't as effective in the brain as we hope. And so why are we not trying to optimize the therapies that we have and try and improve survival that way? Now, this chart actually is about breast cancer, and it's a historic chart, but it actually pushes home an important point that over time, we're slowly trying to make incremental changes to therapy to improve survival. And expecting that there's going to be a magic bullet of immunotherapy or cell therapy in brain cancer might not be realistic. So what can we do to actually make small incremental changes? So if you look at images, and I'm a radiologist, so this is a bright room and a lot of sun, but if you look at the evolution of imaging, we started with this. It was pixels playing Pong at the beginning of CT. And by the 90s, we ended up with slightly better pictures. And then by the 2000s, we ended up with really nice CT pictures. And we're like, wow, we can really see something in the brain there. And you don't need to be a scientist to see that there's something abnormal in this brain. But it keeps evolving. So now we say, okay, we've got a CT and we can see a tumor. And suddenly we've entered the MRI era. So now we see really nice pictures on MRI. And a lot of our patients, radiologists probably aren't the most empathetic of specialists, but a lot of our patients suffer through MRIs. They're not easy. So being in a magnet for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes is not an easy experience for brain tumor patients. And they often go in the magnet 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 times. So this is not an easy process. But as we enter the MR era, we can take more and more and more pictures. But what are we actually accomplishing here? Are we improving outcomes? Are we improving therapy? And we can take endless amounts of pictures of different kinds of brain tumors. So this brain tumor is the most aggressive one that we've talked about, glioblastoma, and they all look different. No one's tumor looks the same. So that demands from the clinicians that we take a personalized approach to every patient. And not just a personalized approach, we want a precision approach. So we want to say, your particular brain tumor looks like this. What can we do on imaging to take a more accurate approach at treating your brain cancer? So we're currently sitting in this space. We're sitting in this beautiful anatomical pictures, and this is standard of care. Every time we get a patient with a brain tumor, you can clearly see, a layperson can see, there's something abnormal there, it's a tumor. But we're moving on, and the North Shore campus has been so progressive in the last 10, 15 years of doing much more basic advanced imaging, which is a bit of a conflict, but this is slightly advanced imaging, but it gives us more information. And in fact, Australia is a pioneer in this kind of brain imaging, particularly PET imaging. So that's where I'm going to probably slight of hand towards my American colleagues, but the Americans are really a long way behind us on PET imaging. And North Shore has been an absolute pioneer in acquiring PET studies. But where the imaging lab is moving, and a lot of what my research focuses on, is what else can we do with advanced imaging? So that's a great question. So we talked about CT, and we've talked about MRI. So PET is a different kind of imaging method where we actually give you something radioactive into your vein. And then that radioactive substance goes to the tumor, and then we measure where that substance comes from. So in fact, in brain tumors, I don't want to say too many acronyms, we use something called FET-PET, which is an amino acid PET scan. And we can take incredible pictures of brain tumors because those amino acids go to the tumor and then give us a picture. So Australia really in the last 10 years has been sort of a world leader with Germany on how to take pictures of brain tumors like this. And in fact, the Brain Cancer Group has funded most of those PET scans for us on the North Shore campus. So where are we moving to? And this is where I'm told I'm not allowed to get too technical, but I'm going to show you a lot of colourful pictures and what we can do. And these are impressive when you start seeing things move. So first of all, I can now look how much blood flow is going to different parts of the brain. I can actually measure how many blood vessels are there in your brain tumour. I can look at chemicals in your tumour. So I can look for a specific chemical in your tumour so we can target it. We can also plan for surgery in a much better way. So this is a brain spinning round, and in fact I can look at all the individual fibres in your brain. So, these acquisitions that used to take us 30 minutes on the scanner, I can say, show me the path for speech, and it will process the speech path for me. So this picture here is perfectly showing me where someone's speech is connected. And that doesn't just sit in a silo. You can do things with those speech patterns that I'm about to show you in an operation. So the Brain Cancer Group is directly responsible for funding this trial. So this is a trial looking at oxygen in tumours. We know from when we take tumours out that if part of your tumour isn't using a lot of oxygen, it will be very resistant to radiotherapy. So if we can show those parts of tumours that don't use a lot of oxygen, we can boost the radiotherapy to that part of the tumour, and we can reduce the chance of resistance and recurrence. So if I show you a scan now, this patient has been scanned and told to get on the scanner and just empty their mind. And I've said to them, try not to think of anything, which is a hard thing to do when you're in an MRI scanner. And very cleverly, we can use advanced methods to map out exactly where this patient's speech is. So all of these little dots you're seeing is all the complexities of speech in a human brain. And in fact, we've overlaid on this patient the tracks that are connecting those parts of the speech part of the human brain. So if I take away where that resting state image is, I can see the tracks that are connecting the parts of the brain. And why this matters is because our lovely surgeons, and you can see Karen actually projected in the background somewhere, our lovely surgeons actually use this intraoperatively, and they can avoid those tracks when they operate on brain tumours so that patients don't wake up with speech problems. So this is very, very advanced imaging that used to take 2 hours on the MRI scanner, and because of sequential improvements, research improvements, now takes about 12 minutes. So one of the biggest challenges for radiologists, which probably don't have the greatest reputation for being on the poverty line, but one of the greatest challenges actually for radiologists is getting Medicare funding for advanced imaging. Because the government refuses to fund things that isn't established as basic protocol. So scans like this that take 12, 15 minutes, we are unable to bill. So there's been a big change in the budget last week, which is actually going to be a huge improvement. But things like this, from a research capacity, we are reliant on research money. And that's why we're so reliant on donors and on government research funding. So now I'm really going to blow your brain. Okay, so we're halfway there. So this kind of imaging is called fingerprinting. Now the Americans have been real pioneers in developing this. And what used to take us 20 minutes to take lots of different pictures of the brain, they developed a method of doing it all in 2 minutes. So what used to be for our poor patients 45 minutes to an hour on the scanner, we can make their scans now 12, 15 minutes. And as a patient, the quality of the experience and your quality of life that you can shrink the length of that scan is incredibly important. Admittedly, as a radiologist, I think that just gives me more time to do more research scans. So if I can shrink their normal standard of care scan to 15 minutes, I like to fill the 45 minutes again with research scans. But for patients, it is very important that if you keep going into the magnet, it's a really unpleasant experience over and over again. And if you can make this shorter and shorter, it becomes much more accessible. This is another project that we're working on. This is a 15-minute scan, and it looks like a lot of pretty pictures again. But what this scan is actually telling me is every single chemical element we can measure in your brain. And we know that tumors display certain kinds of chemicals. And so we use this to map out our radiotherapy fields. And so Michael and I take all this information and we say, what do we do with it? So Michael back understands it and loves all my colourful pictures. Poor old Helen Wheeler looks at all my colourful pictures and has a mental breakdown every time she sees them all. But what are we actually doing with this information? Like, what's it actually doing for patients apart from making scans shorter? And the biggest change that we're interested in to make incremental differences in patient outcomes is to adapt their radiotherapy. We know that if we can give a more accurate radiotherapy field and we can predict where you're going to have your recurrence, we can improve outcomes for patients. And so a lot of our research that is heavily funded by the Brain Cancer Group focuses around how can we improve this plan. If you showed this plan to a layperson and you said, there's the bright bit of tumor and I'm just going to draw a circle around it, all of us would think, is that right? Surely the brain fibers is where the cancer goes and we should be tracking the fibers. And so what we're trying to do is actually map out these regions that are resistant. So a lot of credit to one of my postdocs who's working on this project. This is a good example of a brain tumor. And you can see this blue circle that we've drawn for our radiotherapy. And what we're trying to do with the MANGO trial is actually improve our radiotherapy field so that it goes from one uniform dose of radiotherapy to a very adaptive dose where we're giving higher doses to what we can show is resistant tumor.
Jamie, could you tell us about the colours a little bit?
Sure. So as a sort of, I'm not a radiation oncologist, I'm not even a radiation physicist. So if I speak out of turn, Jackie will probably laugh at me in the background. But if you imagine radiotherapy, we give a big dose of therapy to the tumor, and then we give a bit of a margin around the tumor to say, okay, we think the tumor's here, but also maybe this bit's probably a bit of a risk of recurrence. And if we look, I'm not sure if my arrow is going to show up here. No, probably not. Oh, does it? Okay. So if we look here at this blue one, this is what we do at the moment. We just essentially fire protons or fire radiotherapy at the tumor bed, in a relatively uniform way. So we say give all the dose, and we measure it in grey, the radiation dose, give all the dose to this big sort of tennis ball blob. Whereas on this second picture, which is what we're trying to accomplish, we call this dose painting. We're actually saying we know on the MRI, advanced MRI scans, which regions are resistant to therapy. So all these red regions are where we're giving more dose. And then the yellow regions we're giving a bit more dose. The blue regions we're giving standard dose. And then the green regions we're giving sort of intermediate dose. And so we can show, if we can show before the radiotherapy that specific regions are resistant, you boost these red doses to say we've got to target that area a bit more. The next big step in medical imaging research and in what's happening at the Brain Cancer Group Imaging Lab is actually sort of the next epoch of medical imaging in brain cancer. So even though we've got 1,000 pictures, actually the next step in MRI, this is now going to get a bit sciencey, is quantitative MRI. And that's the idea that we can measure every little dot and we can measure every value in that dot. And then we can use what is the name and letters of the day. We can use the incredible power of AI to improve our fields and improve our therapy. And I'm sure you'll hear, if not today, you'll hear coming up, a big project that we're about to undertake is a project that is focused on quantitative MRI in brain cancer patients and deploying artificial intelligence to help us plan better fields. The difficulty with projects like this is that I can't go to Medicare and say, I've got a brilliant idea, which maybe I do, maybe I don't. I can't go to Medicare and say, I've got a brilliant idea, I want to try lots of new methods, and I want to use artificial intelligence and help this patient. Medicare just says, no, we won't fund it. So I'm completely reliant on research money, grant money, and philanthropic money to even get the scan time to do these sequences. So the project you might hear about, and I've stolen this picture from the internet somewhere, is the Chimera project. Sydney is a big city, but in the research community, particularly in the neuro-oncology research community, Sydney is a small city. We have a small reach relative to Europe, the UK, the US, but we punch above our weight. But the intent of Chimera is to deploy lots of very clever advanced imaging methods in our brain cancer patients in a tolerable amount of time in the magnet, so our patients can tolerate the scans and share all our data. So we want to collaborate with as many people around the world, knowing that we're a small fish in a very big pond. we're inviting the big fish in to use our data and help us improve our fields. And we have some unique things here in Sydney that no one else in the world has. So we have an incredible amount of PET imaging, and we're so lucky to have it, but we also have incredibly good MRI access. So as a Brit/Australian, trying to do this project in the UK is a non-starter. There simply isn't enough access to the hardware. And trying to do this project in the US is very difficult because they're much less likely to share their data. So we have a completely unique opportunity to acquire incredible data and share it with everyone around the world. So this is a big project that's coming up. It's all going to land on someone's desk at some point. Please think about it. If anyone would like to come and see our scanners, our magnets, wants to talk about physics with me, please come and talk to me. I don't usually get many people coming up to talk about physics. But this is where the imaging lab is sitting, amongst other things. And, you know, we have had a focus on very high-grade brain tumours. And I think incremental steps sometimes is forgotten in sort of the noise of what everyone is hoping is going to be a magic bullet. But incremental steps is actually what changes experience for patients and their quality of life. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I knew would happen, that was an absolutely brilliant, brilliant speech. Could we thank Jamie again? Very informative, very entertaining. We have a wonderful community speaker with us today, Joanne Hüging. So I'd like to introduce Joanne and thank her very much for being happy to come along today and share their story. It's very special.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to our story, and I will admit it's a journey filled with emotion, so sometimes it might leave me speechless. I do apologise for that. So today I stand here as the wife of a brain cancer fighter, Will. On the 20th September 2023, so last year, our worlds turned upside down. It started with 2 weeks of persistent headaches that led us to Will's GP, who I am so thankful for, and who wasted no time in sending Will off for an MRI. So on that date, on the 20th, Will drove himself down to the GP to get his results. I have no idea how he managed to do that. He was told that he had a brain tumour and he was going to be referred to Professor Brian Owler. While he was at the appointment, I actually got a text message saying, "Are you available to book for remediation?" No idea. So I was a bit confused. So he came home and blurted out, "I have brain cancer." Before we could even process the news, I got a phone call from the neurosurgeon's office urging us to get to the hospital, which we did. I'll be honest, I did look at those scans well before the appointment. And having worked in this health system for over 12 years, I saw that there was something there, but I'd hoped that I was wrong. Will's confusion was escalating, a stark contrast to his normal self. But now he was in hospital with somewhat of a plan. Surgery was booked for that Saturday, and I found myself signing consent forms because Will no longer had the capacity to do so. Initial suspicions pointed to a glioblastoma, but we wouldn't have confirmation for weeks. We navigated this part of the journey through the private healthcare system simply because that's where the GP directed us to. Will must have mentioned that he had private health insurance at that appointment. But it was the next steps that had me worried. Were we going to be referred to the best team to manage brain cancer? Travelling 45 minutes each way for treatment really wasn't going to be feasible in the long term because I still needed to work, as it was going to be quite likely that Will wasn't going to be able to go to work. And we also have a 13-year-old son that we needed to provide support to as well. And what would the cost be? Were we going to be able to sustain that? So that week in the private hospital was really hard. I had to chase down the registrar every time I went to visit Will just to get an update. And each time I saw her or the nurses on shift, they looked at me with pity and despair. I got it. This was bad. Lost in a sea of uncertainty, I leaned on my professional background as a social worker. and I delved into the research where I found the brain cancer group. Here I read about Dr. Wheeler and Professor Michael Back, two doctors whose long-term career focus was brain cancer. And they happened to be based at the Royal North Shore Hospital, nice and close to work. So close, in fact, that I actually work in the building next door. I knew that Will deserved their expertise, so advocacy became my mission. I had to convince the registrar of the private hospital that I wanted Will to be referred to Royal North Shore, and I had to remind them actually a few times to get that done. Marina, who you've heard about today already, the amazing nurse practitioner with the brain cancer group, she got a phone call from me following up even before we had the pathology results. So no idea what treatment was to come. And that was all because I knew I had to be an advocate for Will so that he would get the best treatment possible. So what made me push even more for the brain cancer group was the resources that would be available to me as a carer, but also to Will as the patient. Having someone like Marina who can navigate the booking of appointments, spending time to go through how treatment is going to work, what the potential side effects were, answering all of our questions, writing a script, a pathology request, or just being at the end of a phone call or an email. I cannot tell you how many emails I've sent Marina. And she responds really quickly. So her role is, because the brain cancer group does not receive any continual government funding, access to someone like Marina is only made possible through generous donations. I was also keen to have access to a multidisciplinary team because it meant that everything stayed in its one place, and as well access to clinical trials and some of that amazing research that those brain scans are phenomenal. So what about those without a degree in social work or the resources to understand this system? The journey doesn't end with the diagnosis, it is just the beginning of a maze of decisions. People place their trust in the advice of doctors, hoping for the best. Confronted by mountains of paperwork, significant financial worries, and the emotional toll of facing the unknown. Accessing treatment, daily trips to hospital for 30 days for the radiation therapy, it's a burden that no one should bear alone. But with the limited resources that are available for people with brain cancer, a lot of people do this alone. This is where support becomes a lifeline for patients and caregivers alike. Having someone to turn to ease the burden of anxiety and stress, it makes the difference. For some people, this journey is short. For others, much longer. It is the great unknown that adds to the anxiety, stress, and extended grief. As someone who's worked in the health system, and I've supported doctors who deliver bad news, I understand that there are some of those that actually don't do that really well. There's something different about the team connected with the brain cancer group. At no time have we felt like another number. Time is taken in appointments, we never felt rushed, or that any question is not worth their time. The team are interested and engaged, even when they're crazy busy. There's something about the culture of this team that helps us navigate this horrible situation. So here we are now, heartbroken but not defeated. Will, my partner of 26 years, faces a formidable foe. A glioblastoma IDH wild type, WHO grade 4, ATRX retained methylated. A little bit of a mouthful. Up until recently, that would have been a GBM4. But through research, including that of the brain cancer group, we now know that there are many variables in this disease. So what's next? This is where you all come in. Your support, whether it be through fundraising or spreading awareness, offers hope to families like ours. Together, we can fund vital research, provide essential support for services, and fight this horrible disease. A real strength of the brain cancer group is its intimate connection with a busy neuro-oncology service, so it's able to direct funds to impactful programs for brain cancer patients and their carers. Will amazes me each day, the way that he's taken on this journey. I want to end with something that he said at his last appointment with Dr. Wheeler and Marina. I'm not going to worry about the bad news until I get the bad news that will one day come. To Will, I'm in awe of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. That was very, very moving. And thank you, Will, for coming along as well. Best of luck with your journey. So that's the end of our formal part, well, the formal part of our program. We will go back out again after lunch and sell more raffle tickets. I'll be back to draw those later. Please don't forget that we've got beautiful donated prizes that we really don't want to have to take back home again. So I appreciate you having another look at the bazaar. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy lunch.